The silver ship moved through space like a hunting shark. Commander Vexatal stood on the bridge, his four eyes focused on the main screen. The small blue planet spun slowly below them, unaware of the danger watching from above. "Report," Vextal said to his crew. Lieutenant Jekra checked his instruments. "The planet shows clear signs of intelligent life, Commander. They broadcast radio signals across their world. We detected nuclear weapons testing in several locations. Their technology appears primitive." Vextal nodded. This was the third world they had scouted this month for the Zephyrian Empire. The others had been empty rocks or gas giants. This one was different. This one had life that could serve the Empire. "Any space defenses?" he asked. "Minimal, sir. They have launched small vehicles beyond their atmosphere. Some orbit their planet. Others have reached their moon. Nothing that poses a threat to our forces." The commander studied the data flowing across his screen. The beings on this world called themselves humans. They lived on large land masses separated by vast oceans. Their cities glowed with artificial light during the planet's night cycle. They seemed to fight among themselves often, dividing into separate nations that competed for resources. Perfect for conquest. Far below on the planet's surface, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the lunar observatory station, watching his instruments with growing concern. For 3 months, his team had detected strange energy readings at the edge of their solar system. The readings didn't match anything in their databases. "Jake, you need to see this," Dr. Lisa Hayes called from her workstation. She was the station's lead scientist, specializing in the study of potential alien life. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her blue eyes showed excitement mixed with fear. Morrison walked over to her station. "What do you have?" "The energy signature just changed. It's moving closer to Earth. Whatever it is, it's big and it's artificial." Lieutenant Colonel Rick Santos looked up from his own console. The former military strategist had been assigned to the lunar station 60 months ago when the government created the Earth Defense Coalition. His job was to watch for exactly this kind of threat. "How big are we talking?" Santos asked. Hayes checked her readings again. "Based on the energy output, I estimate it's at least 500 meters long, possibly larger." Morrison felt his stomach tighten. For years, scientists had debated whether humanity was alone in the universe. The question was about to be answered, and he wasn't sure they would like the result. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," he ordered. "Full encryption. Tell them we have possible first contact." On the Zephyrian ship, Vextal received new orders from Fleet Command. The message was clear and direct. "Survey the planet. Catalog its resources and population. Prepare for invasion." The Empire had followed this pattern for centuries. Find a world with intelligent life. Study their defenses, conquer them, add their technology and population to the Empire's growing collection of slave worlds. Begin detailed scans, Vextal ordered. "I want to know everything about these humans, their technology, their military capabilities, their social structure. Everything." The ship's sensors reached out like invisible fingers probing Earth's defenses. They found orbital satellites that seemed designed for communication and weather monitoring. They detected military bases scattered across the continents. They counted nuclear weapons stockpiles in conventional armies. To Zephyrian eyes, it all looked pathetically weak. "Their largest military has approximately 1 million active soldiers," Jekra reported. "Their nuclear weapons are crude fission and fusion devices. Their space capabilities are limited to short-range vessels that cannot leave their local system." Vextal smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Any sign they have detected our presence?" "Negative, Commander. Their sensors are too primitive to detect us at this range." But Vextal was wrong. Deep in an underground facility in Colorado, Dr. Kevin Walsh was staring at readings that made his blood run cold. The facility officially didn't exist. The government called it the Terra Defense Initiative, and only a handful of people knew its real purpose. For 50 years since the end of World War II, a secret group of scientists and military leaders had been preparing for this day. They had studied every science fiction story, every military scenario, every possible way an alien invasion might unfold. They had built weapons and defenses that the public never knew existed, And now those preparations were about to be tested. Walsh picked up a secure phone that connected directly to the White House. "Mr. President, this is Dr. Walsh at TDI. We have a situation. The Watchers have arrived." President Helen Carter had been expecting this call for months. The intelligence reports had been clear. Something was coming. Something that would test everything humanity had built. "Confirmed contact?" she asked. "Confirmed. Large vessel, non-human origin, conducting detailed scans of Earth. Based on the scan patterns, I believe they're preparing for invasion." Carter closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her voice was steady and calm. "Initiate protocol. 1. Contact General Anderson. Tell him it's time." General Paul Anderson had been waiting for this moment his entire career. The unified Earth forces under his command were not the scattered, competing militaries that the aliens would expect to find. They were a single, coordinated defense force that had been training in secret for decades. He walked to his command center and activated the global communication network. Within minutes, commanders on every continent received the same message. The enemy had arrived. The war for Earth was about to begin. Dr. Hayes finished decoding the alien transmission just as alarms began sounding throughout the lunar station. The message was simple and direct, broadcast on multiple frequencies to ensure every human on Earth would receive it. "People of the third planet," the translation read, "you will surrender your world to the Zephyrian Empire. Resistance will be met with destruction. You have 7 of your planetary rotations to comply with this demand. Prepare for occupation." Morrison stared at the message on his screen. 7 days. The aliens were giving humanity 7 days to surrender, their entire planet. He thought about his wife and daughter back on Earth. He thought about every human who had ever lived, loved, and dreamed on the blue planet below. The aliens had made one critical mistake in their message. They thought this was a demand. Morrison reached for his communication panel and began transmitting on the same frequency the aliens had used. His message was shorter than theirs, but it carried the weight of an entire species behind it. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Coalition. Your demand for surrender has been received and rejected. You have been warned. Leave our system immediately or face the consequences of your actions." The transmission ended, and Morrison leaned back in his chair. The die was cast. Humanity had just declared war on an interstellar empire. The aliens had no idea what they were getting themselves into. Fleet Admiral Corthon read the scout report from his flagship deep in space. The massive vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. Around it, 300 warships waited for his command to begin. "The invasion. Primitive," he said to his second-in-command. "These humans have barely left their own world. Their weapons are chemical explosives and basic nuclear devices. They fight each other instead of working together." Commander Vextal stood beside him, still feeling uneasy about the human response. "Admiral, their reply to our surrender demand was confident. Perhaps we should study them longer before we attack." Corthon laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. "Confidence means nothing without power to back it up. How many worlds have we conquered? How many species have threatened us with their primitive weapons? They all fall the same way." The Admiral had ruled the Second Armada for 20 years. In that time, he had brought 47 worlds under Empire control. Each conquest had been swift and brutal. He saw no reason why Earth should be different. "Prepare the invasion fleet," he ordered. "We move in 3 days." On Earth, President Helen Carter sat in the emergency meeting room deep beneath the White House. Around the table sat the most powerful leaders on the planet. But these were not the faces the public knew. These were the real commanders of humanity's defense. General Paul Anderson spread out holographic displays showing troop positions across the globe. All forces are in position. The orbital platforms are armed and ready. The deep space sensors show the enemy fleet gathering at the edge of our system. Dr. Kevin Walsh activated another display. The Terra Defense Initiative has been running for 53 years. Everything we built, everything we planned was for this moment. Carter looked around the table. "Are we ready?" More than ready, said Admiral Kate Thompson. The public knew her as the head of the Space Navy, but her real role was far more important. Our ships are in position throughout the system. The enemy doesn't know we have them. General Anderson nodded. Every major city has underground bunkers that can hold the entire population. Our manufacturing centers are protected. We can fight this war for years if we need to. Carter turned to Dr. Susan Clark, the head of the planet's environmental systems. The terraform generators? Ready and waiting, Clark replied. If they try to land ground forces, we can make their lives very difficult. The meeting continued for hours, going over every detail of the defense plan. When it ended, Carter walked to the communication room. It was time to send one final message to the aliens. The transmission was broadcast from every major radio telescope on Earth. Dr. Walsh had written it himself, making sure the aliens would understand exactly what they were facing. To the commanders of the Zephyrian fleet, the message began. This is President Helen Carter of the United Earth Government. You have demanded our surrender. We decline. You have threatened our world. We are not impressed. You believe we are primitive and weak. You are making a fatal error. The transmission continued with technical details that made Vextal's blood run cold when he heard them. The humans described defensive systems that shouldn't exist on a primitive world. They listed weapons specifications that rivaled Empire technology. They spoke of tactics and strategies that showed deep understanding of space warfare. This is our final warning, the message concluded. Leave our system now. Return to your empire and tell them that Earth is not for conquest. If they ignore this warning, they will face consequences beyond their imagination. Corthan listened to the transmission and laughed again. Bluffing, he said. They hope to scare us away with lies about weapons they don't have. But Vextal studied the technical details more closely. Some of the specifications matched classified Empire research. How could primitive humans know about those projects? Admiral, he said carefully, perhaps we should verify their claims before we attack. Enough, Corthan snapped. I have conquered worlds with technology far beyond these humans. They will fall like all the others. The Admiral gave the order, and the fleet began moving toward Earth. 300 warships, carrying enough firepower to turn the planet's surface into glass. 50,000 ground troops waited in the transport ships, ready to occupy the conquered world. As they traveled, Corthan sent a message back to Empire Command. Conquest of the human world proceeding as planned. Expect victory within one planetary. Rotation of arrival. On Earth, long-range sensors detected the approaching fleet. In the command center, General Anderson watched the enemy ships move into formation. Everything was proceeding exactly as the defense plan predicted. They're using standard Empire tactics, he reported to President Carter. Formation 7 Alpha, just like our intelligence said they would. Carter nodded. The intelligence was good because it came from sources the Empire never suspected. For decades, Earth had been in contact with refugees from conquered worlds. Those refugees had provided detailed information about Empire military doctrine, technology, and weaknesses. Signal all commanders, Carter ordered. Operation Mousetrap is now active. Across the solar system, hidden weapons platforms powered up. Ships that looked like asteroids activated their engines. Bases built inside moons opened their launch bays. Earth's real defenses were about to be revealed. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked frantically at the Lunar Observatory, tracking the enemy fleet's approach. She had decoded dozens of Empire transmissions, learning their language and understanding their plans. Jake, she called to Captain Morrison. They're not just planning to conquer us. They want to study our technology and add it to their own. Morrison checked his weapons systems. The lunar base wasn't just an observation post. Hidden beneath the surface were missile launchers and energy weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Let them come, he said. They're about to learn that studying Earth technology is a lot more dangerous than they think. Lieutenant Colonel Santos coordinated with defense forces around the globe. Every major military installation was actually the tip of a massive underground complex. The Empire thought they were facing scattered human armies. They were actually facing a unified planetary defense force that had been preparing for this war for half a century. As the alien fleet entered the outer solar system, automated probes launched from hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt. The probes carried a simple message in the Empire's own language. Last chance. Turn back now. Admiral Corthon destroyed the probes with a single weapons blast. Pathetic, he said. They send toys to threaten the Second Armada. Commander Vextal watched the probe debris scatter in space. Something about the construction bothered him. The technology was too advanced for the primitive world they were attacking. Admiral, he said one final time, I request permission to withdraw and reassess the situation. Corthon turned to face him, eyes blazing with anger. Are you questioning my command? No, sir, I'm questioning our intelligence about this world. Our intelligence is perfect. These humans are weak and divided. In 12 hours, their world will belong to the Empire. The fleet continued toward Earth, passing through the outer planets. Hidden sensors tracked their every move, feeding data to the planetary defense network. The trap was nearly complete. On Earth, President Carter stood in her command center, watching the enemy fleet approach on the main screen. Beside her, the real commanders of humanity's forces waited for her signal. Gentlemen and ladies, she said quietly, for 50 years we have prepared for this day. Our parents and grandparents built the weapons we now carry. Our children and grandchildren will inherit the galaxy we are about to win. The alien fleet crossed the orbit of Mars. Earth's outer defenses came online. The war for humanity's future was about to begin, and the Zephyrian Empire had no idea what was waiting for them. The Zephyrian invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's orbit. 300 warships spread across space in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. Admiral Corthon stood on his bridge, watching. The small blue planet turned slowly before them. Begin the attack, he ordered. Target their satellites first. Blind them, then destroy their military installations. The first wave of energy beams lanced out toward Earth's orbital infrastructure. Hundreds of satellites floated in space around the planet, looking fragile and defenseless. The Zephyrian weapons should have destroyed them instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. Colonel Amy Foster watched from the Orbital Defense Command Center as the alien weapons struck their targets. She had been waiting for this moment. For 10 years, ever since she joined the Secret Space Defense Program. Direct hits on targets 1 through 50, her weapons officer reported. No damage detected. Foster smiled. The aliens had just made their first mistake. What they thought were communication satellites were actually the most advanced defensive systems humanity had ever built. Activate the network, she ordered. Across Earth's orbit, thousands of objects that looked like space junk suddenly came to life. Old rocket stages, dead satellites, and pieces of debris revealed their true nature. Each one was a carefully disguised weapons platform, powered by miniaturized fusion reactors and armed with kinetic accelerators. The first barrage caught the Zephyrian fleet completely off guard. Chunks of metal moving at incredible speed tore through their outer ships. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as alien vessels died one after another. Impossible! Admiral Corthon shouted. How do they have this technology? Commander Vextal checked his damage reports. 20 ships destroyed in the first 30 seconds. The humans weren't just defending themselves, they were winning. Admiral, we need to retreat and reassess, he said urgently. Never! Corthon roared. All ships, full attack. Destroy everything in orbit around that planet. The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with every weapon they had. Energy beams and missile swarms filled the space around Earth. But for every human platform they destroyed, 10 more revealed themselves. The debris field around Earth was actually a massive minefield that had been building for decades. Dr. Ryan Cooper worked frantically at his console in the Colorado Deep Space Command Center. The facility was buried 3 miles underground, protected by layers of armor and energy shields. His job was to coordinate the orbital battle from the planet's surface. Sector 7 reporting heavy enemy fire, came a voice over the communications system. Requesting support. Cooper checked his tactical display. The aliens were trying to concentrate their attack on one section of the defense grid. It was exactly what the planners had expected them to do. Deploy the ghost ships, he ordered. High above Earth, Captain Lisa Reynolds received the activation code aboard her vessel, the Defiant. The ship looked like a standard human destroyer, but it carried technology that even most Earth forces didn't know about. Phase drive online, her engineer reported. Ready for transition, Reynolds nodded. Take us through. The Defiant shimmered and became transparent. Phase technology allowed the ship to exist partially outside normal space, making it invisible to sensors and immune to weapons fire. It was humanity's most closely guarded secret. The ship reappeared directly behind the Zephyrian flagship, close enough that Reynolds could see alien crew members through the bridge windows. Her weapons powered up and fired at point-blank range. The flagship's shields collapsed instantly. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as critical systems failed. Admiral Corthan felt his command ship shudder under the devastating attack. Where did they come from? He demanded. His tactical officer stared at his instruments in confusion. Unknown, sir. They appeared from nothing. Our sensors show no trace of how they got there. More human ships began appearing throughout the Zephyrian formation. Ships that had been invisible suddenly materialized among the alien fleet, firing at close range before disappearing again. The battle turned into a nightmare for the Empire forces. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't understand. Human technology was supposed to be primitive, but these weapons were more advanced than anything in the Zephyrian arsenal. On the planet's surface, Major Dan Phillips led his ground forces toward the landing zones where enemy troops were trying to establish a foothold. The few Zephyrian transports that had made it through the orbital battle were dropping soldiers in remote areas. Phillips had been training for this battle his entire adult life. He commanded the 1st Earth Defense Regiment, a unit that officially didn't exist. His soldiers carried weapons that looked like standard military equipment but fired rounds that could punch through tank armor. Contact front, one of his squad leaders reported. 50 enemy troops advancing on our position. Phillips raised his rifle and sighted through the scope. The Zephyrian soldiers were tall and thin, with forearms and natural armor plating. Their weapons looked dangerous, but they moved like they expected to face primitive humans with crude firearms. Open fire, Phillips ordered. The first volley dropped half the alien squad instantly. The survivors took cover and returned fire, but their energy weapons barely scratched the human soldiers' armor. What looked like standard combat gear was actually powered exoskeletons with built-in energy shields. The battle was over in minutes. Not a single human soldier was injured, while the entire alien squad lay dead or wounded. Similar scenes played out across the globe. Every Zephyrian landing force met the same fate. The humans they expected to find didn't exist. Instead, they faced a military that had been secretly preparing for interstellar warfare for decades. In Antarctica, Dr. Susan Clark activated the planet's final defensive system. The terraform generators had been built inside the ice sheet, hidden from satellites, and buried under miles of frozen water. When they came online, they began changing Earth's atmosphere in ways that would be deadly to the alien invaders. The modifications were subtle but effective. The oxygen content shifted slightly. Atmospheric pressure changed in small increments. Electromagnetic fields fluctuated in patterns that interfered with Zephyrian biology. Any alien who tried to breathe Earth's air would find their respiratory system shutting down. Their equipment would malfunction as the electromagnetic changes disrupted their electronics. The planet itself was becoming hostile to the invaders. Commander Vextal felt the changes immediately. His breathing became labored and his vision started to blur. Around him, other crew members were showing similar symptoms. "Admiral," he gasped, "something is wrong with the air on this ship." Corthan was having trouble breathing too, but he refused to admit weakness. "Impossible. We're in space. Their atmosphere can't affect us here." But it could, and it was. The terraform generators weren't just changing Earth's air. They were projecting energy fields that extended far beyond the planet's surface, affecting any ship within their range. The Zephyrian fleet began to suffer system failures across the board. Navigation computers crashed, weapon systems went offline, life support started breaking down. Captain Morrison watched the battle from the lunar observatory, coordinating with the various defense forces. The plan was working better than anyone had dared hope. The alien fleet was in complete disarray. Enemy forces are requesting permission to withdraw, Dr. Hayes reported from her communication station. Morrison considered the request. The aliens had come to conquer Earth and enslave humanity. They had ignored every warning and attacked without provocation. Denied, he said simply. They wanted a war. Now they have one. The battle continued for 6 more hours. By the end, the mighty Zephyrian Second Armada was reduced to scattered debris and a handful of crippled ships trying desperately to escape. Admiral Corthan found himself aboard a damaged vessel with only a skeleton crew, his flagship destroyed and his fleet annihilated. Commander Vextal, his ship captured by human forces, sat in a detention cell aboard the Earth vessel Liberty. The human captain who had taken him prisoner was a woman named Sam Garcia, and she seemed almost sympathetic to his situation. "You tried to warn your admiral," she said through the cell's force field. "Why didn't he listen?" Vextal looked up at her with his 4 eyes, still struggling to understand what had happened. "We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Your people appeared weak and divided. How did you do this?" Garcia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We tried to tell you. Earth isn't what it seems. You should have listened to your own instincts." The trap had been perfect. The Zephyrian Empire had walked into a carefully prepared ambush, convinced they were attacking a primitive world. Instead, they had found a fortress that had been waiting for them for decades. And this was only the beginning. The wreckage of the Zephyrian Second Armada floated in space around Earth like a graveyard of metal and dreams. Admiral Corthan sat in the brig of the human ship Victory, his 4 arms chained to the wall. His once mighty fleet was gone, destroyed, by creatures he had dismissed as primitive savages. Captain Jake Morrison entered the detention area, carrying a datapad and wearing the calm expression of someone who had just won an impossible victory. He pulled up a chair and sat across from the defeated alien commander. "Your empire is going to want to know what happened here," Morrison said quietly. "I'm going to tell you the truth, and then you're going to carry that message back to your masters." Corthan raised his head, his eyes still showing defiance despite his defeat. "You may have won this battle, but the Empire has thousands of fleets. They will return and burn your world to ash." Morrison smiled and activated his datapad. The screen showed a star map with hundreds of red dots scattered across the galaxy. Those red dots are Zephyrian military bases and fleet positions. We've been tracking all of them for the last 30 years. The alien admiral stared at the display in shock. "Impossible. Our security is perfect. No primitive species could penetrate our networks." "That's where you made your first mistake," Morrison continued. "You assumed we were primitive. You assumed we were alone. You assumed this was our first contact with galactic civilization." He touched the screen, and the display changed to show Earth's history over the past century. Hidden among the normal events were secret meetings, underground construction projects, and technology transfers that the public had never known about. "The truth is, Admiral, we've been in contact with other species for over 60 years. Not your empire, but the people you've conquered and enslaved, the refugees who escaped your rule and came to us for help." Morrison stood up and walked to the small window that showed Earth spinning peacefully below. "Every science fiction story you detected in our broadcasts wasn't entertainment. It was planning. Every military exercise wasn't training. It was preparation. Every space launch wasn't exploration. It was construction." He turned back to face the stunned alien. "Earth isn't a primitive world that happened to have good defenses. Earth is the secret headquarters of a galactic resistance movement that's been waiting for you to find us." Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Major Dan Phillips was interrogating captured Zephyrian ground troops in a facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The aliens had expected to face farmers and factory workers with hunting rifles. Instead, they had encountered soldiers who fought like they had been studying Zephyrian tactics for decades. Because they had been. "Tell me about your invasion protocol," Phillips said to the alien prisoner sitting across from him. The creature was tall and thin, with natural armor plating and forearms, Its translator device allowed them to communicate. "We have invaded hundreds of worlds," the alien replied. "The pattern is always the same. Orbital bombardment, then ground. Assault, then occupation. Your species should have surrendered after the first attack." Phillips nodded and activated a holographic display. "Here's what you don't understand. This facility we're sitting in was built in 1962. The weapons my soldiers carry were designed in 1975. Our orbital defense grid was completed in 1989. We've been ready for your invasion since before most of my troops were born." The alien stared at the display showing construction timelines and weapon specifications. "But how did you know we were coming?" "Because survivors from the worlds you conquered told us about your methods. They described your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. We've had 50 years to prepare countermeasures for everything you might do." Dr. Susan Clark worked in her laboratory beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, monitoring the terraform generators that had turned Earth's atmosphere into a weapon against the invaders. The technology was based on designs provided by refugees from a dozen different worlds. "The atmospheric modifications are holding steady," she reported to the command center. "Any Zephyrian who tries to breathe our air will experience immediate respiratory distress. Their equipment is failing as the electromagnetic fields disrupt their electronics." President Carter's voice came through the secure communication link. "How long can we maintain the field?" "Indefinitely," Clark replied. "The generators are powered by geothermal energy. As long as the planet has a molten core, we can keep this up." The terraform system was more than just a defensive weapon. It was proof of how long humanity had been preparing for this war. The generators had been built over decades, hidden inside natural formations around the globe. They could change Earth's environment in ways that would be deadly to dozens of different alien species. In orbit above Earth, Captain Lisa Reynolds commanded the human fleet as it hunted down the surviving Zephyrian ships. Her vessel, the Defiant, moved through space using phase technology that made it nearly impossible to detect or target. "Enemy destroyer attempting to escape toward the outer system," her tactical officer reported. "Intercept and disable," Reynolds ordered. "We want prisoners, not debris." The Defiant shimmered and disappeared, reappearing directly in front of the fleeing alien ship. The Zephyrian vessel found itself facing weapons that could tear through their strongest armor like paper. "This is Captain Reynolds of the Earth Defense Force," she broadcast to the alien ship. "Surrender now and prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resist will result in your immediate destruction." The enemy ship powered down its weapons and transmitted a surrender signal. It was the same scene playing out across the solar system as human forces rounded up the survivors of the once mighty invasion fleet. Dr. Kevin Walsh stood in the command center of the Terra Defense Initiative, watching reports come in from around the globe. For more than 50 years, he had overseen humanity's preparation for this day. Now he was seeing the results of decades of secret planning and construction. "All major population centers report successful defense," came a voice over the communication system. "Enemy ground forces have been eliminated or captured. Atmospheric defense fields are functioning normally." Walsh nodded and turned to President Carter, who had joined him in the underground facility. "Phase 1 is complete, Madam President. The invasion has been repelled." Carter looked at the tactical displays showing the wreckage of the alien fleet. "And Phase 2? "Ready to begin on your order," Walsh replied. "Our deep space vessels are standing by. The liberation fleets are prepared for launch." The president walked to the center of the command room, where a holographic display showed the entire galaxy. Hundreds of star systems were marked in red, indicating worlds under Zephyrian control. Each one represented billions of enslaved beings who had been waiting for freedom. "How many ships do we have available?" she asked. Admiral Kate Thompson stepped forward. She had been the secret commander of Earth's space forces for 15 years, building a fleet that the public never knew existed. 2,000 vessels of various classes, Madam President, all equipped with phase drive technology and advanced weapon systems. Carter nodded slowly. The decision she was about to make would change the course of galactic history. Earth could stay hidden and safe, or it could reveal itself as the center of a resistance movement that spanned the galaxy. Signal all fleet commanders, she said, quietly. Operation Liberation is authorized. We're going to free every world the Empire has conquered. Commander Vextel, still imprisoned aboard the human ship Liberty, felt the vessel shudder as its engines came online. Through the small window in his cell, he could see other human ships preparing for departure. Vessels that had appeared from nowhere during the battle were now forming into attack formations. Captain Garcia entered his cell, carrying news that would shake the foundations of the Zephyrian Empire. Your empire is about to learn something important, she said. Earth wasn't your target. Earth was your trap. For 60 years, we've been gathering refugees from your conquered worlds. We've been learning about your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. She paused and looked directly into his 4 eyes. Every world you've enslaved is about to be liberated. Every species you've oppressed is about to be armed with weapons designed specifically to defeat your forces. The galactic war you started today isn't going to end with Earth's conquest. Vextel felt a chill run through his body as the implications became clear. You're going to attack the Empire? Garcia smiled, but there was no mercy in her expression. We're not going to attack the Empire, Commander. We're going to destroy it. Every base, every fleet, every installation that supports your slave system is going to be eliminated. The human fleet began moving toward the edge of the solar system, thousands of ships carrying weapons and technology that the Zephyrian Empire had never seen before. Earth's secret was finally revealed, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The primitive world that the Empire had tried to conquer was actually the most dangerous enemy they had ever faced. And the war was just beginning. The news of the Second Armada's destruction reached the Zephyrian capital 3 days later. Emperor Thraxel read the report in his throne room, while his advisors stood in shocked silence around him. 300 warships gone, 50,000 soldiers dead or captured, Admiral Corthan defeated by primitive humans. This is impossible, the Emperor said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. How does a species that has never left their home system destroy our most powerful fleet? General Vorthak, head of the Imperial military, studied the tactical reports with growing concern. The humans use technology we don't understand, Your Majesty. Weapons that appear from nothing. Ships that can phase in and out of normal space. Defensive systems disguised as debris. The Emperor stood up from his throne, his towering form casting shadows across the room. Send the First Armada. Send the Third. Send every ship we have. I want that world turned to ash. But before any orders could be carried out, alarms began, sounding throughout the capital. Enemy ships had appeared in the outer system, moving toward the homeworld with impossible speed. Admiral Kate Thompson stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Liberator, watching the Zephyrian capital world grow, larger on the main screen. Around her, 2,000 human vessels moved in perfect formation, their phase drives allowing them to appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning. All fleet commanders report ready, her tactical officer announced. Thompson nodded. Begin operation. Freedom. Target all military installations. Disable their communications first, then their weapons. We want the civilian population to survive this. The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each one targeting a different part of the Zephyrian military complex. Ships that had been invisible moments before suddenly appeared above orbital platforms and space stations, their weapons already firing. The Empire's defenses collapsed within hours. Their sensors couldn't track ships that existed partially outside normal space. Their weapons couldn't hit targets that could phase through solid matter. Their communications were jammed by technology they had never seen before. On the surface of the capital world, General Vorthak watched his command center's displays go dark, one by one. How are they doing this? Our technology is supposed to be superior to anything in the galaxy. His aide, a young officer named Kether, checked the incoming reports. Sir, we're receiving messages from our conquered worlds. They're all under attack by the same human forces. Every military base, every occupation force, every imperial installation is being destroyed simultaneously. The scope of the human offensive was beyond anything the Empire had imagined. While one fleet attacked the capital, others had appeared at every major Zephyrian base across the galaxy. It was a coordinated assault that required planning on a scale that seemed impossible for a single world. On the planet Zerion, which the Empire had conquered 40 years earlier, native rebels watched in amazement as human ships appeared in their sky. Captain Ben Foster broadcast a message to the planet's surface in the local language. People of Zerion, this is Captain Foster of the Earth Liberation Fleet. Your long captivity is over. We are here to free your world and help you rebuild your civilization. The orbital bombardment platforms that had kept the planet enslaved for decades were destroyed in minutes. Zephyrian ground forces found themselves facing not just human soldiers, but native rebels armed with advanced weapons and supported by invisible ships that could strike anywhere. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. The Draknari system, enslaved for 60 years. The Velkoth colonies conquered a century ago. The mining worlds of the Keth Empire stripped of their resources for generations. All of them suddenly found their imperial overlords under attack by forces that seemed to come from nowhere. Dr. Alex Martinez worked frantically in his laboratory aboard the Liberator, monitoring the galactic communication networks. As the head of Earth's intelligence division, he had spent 20 years learning everything about the Zephyrian Empire. "Admiral," he reported to Thompson, "we're intercepting panic communications from across the Empire. They're calling this an invasion from another dimension. They have no idea how many ships we have or where we're coming from." Thompson smiled grimly. "Good. Fear will make them more likely to surrender quickly. Any word from the Emperor?" "He's trying to coordinate a counterattack, but his fleets are scattered across the galaxy and we're hitting them faster than they can respond." The truth was that the human offensive was possible because of 50 years of careful planning. Every Imperial base had been mapped by refugees. Every fleet movement had been tracked by hidden sensors. Every weakness in their technology had been studied and exploited. President Carter stood in the war room beneath the White House, watching reports come in from across the galaxy. The liberation was proceeding even faster than they had hoped. "Zerion. Reports complete Imperial withdrawal," came a voice over the communication system. "Draknari system is requesting immediate aid to rebuild their government. The Velkoth colonies are asking for weapons to defend against Imperial counterattacks." Carter turned to Dr. Walsh, who had coordinated Earth's preparation for this moment. "How long before the Empire realizes what's really happening?" "They're starting to understand now," Walsh replied. "Our intelligence reports show Imperial Command is trying to figure out how a single primitive world could launch simultaneous attacks across the entire galaxy." The answer was simple but devastating. Earth wasn't acting alone. For 60 years, refugees from conquered worlds had been building hidden bases throughout the galaxy. When the human fleet revealed itself, it wasn't just 2,000 ships. It was 10,000 vessels crewed by beings from dozens of species, all united in their hatred of the Zephyrian Empire. Commander Vextal, still aboard the human ship Liberty, watched through his cell window as the Liberation Fleet moved toward another Imperial stronghold. Captain Garcia had allowed him to observe the offensive, wanting him to understand the scope of what was happening. "This isn't just a human attack," he said as understanding finally dawned. "You've been building an alliance." Garcia nodded. "Every species your empire ever conquered, every refugee who escaped your rule, every survivor who made it to Earth with stories of Imperial brutality, they've all been waiting for this day." She activated a display showing the galactic map. Red dots, representing Imperial bases, were winking out one by one as Liberation forces destroyed them. Green dots representing freed worlds were appearing everywhere. "Your empire ruled through fear and isolation," Garcia continued. "You kept conquered species separated so they couldn't work together. But you made one mistake. You let some of them escape and they found us." Within 1 week, the 1,000-year Zephyrian Empire ceased to exist as a military force. Their fleets were destroyed or scattered. Their bases were captured or abandoned. Their conquered worlds were free for the first time in generations. Emperor Thraxel found himself barricaded in his palace as human forces landed on the capital world. His generals had fled or surrendered. His fleets were gone. His empire was in ruins. Major Dan Phillips led the assault team that finally reached the throne room. The Emperor sat alone on his massive chair, still wearing his ceremonial armor but looking small and defeated. "Surrender, and you'll be treated according to the rules of war," Philip said. "Continue to resist, and you'll be destroyed like the rest of your military." The Emperor looked at the human soldiers surrounding him. They were smaller than his own species, but they carried weapons that had just destroyed a galactic empire. Their leader spoke calmly, without hatred or anger. "How?" Thraxel asked quietly. "How did primitive creatures defeat the greatest military force in the galaxy?" Phillips removed his helmet, showing his young human face. "Because we weren't primitive, Your Majesty. We were patient. We spent 50 years learning about your weaknesses and building alliances with everyone you oppressed. You taught the galaxy to hate you, and we taught the galaxy to fight you." The Emperor surrendered without another word. 6 months later, the Galactic Federation held its first assembly on Earth. Representatives from 300 worlds gathered in the United Nations building in New York. Species that had been enslaved for centuries sat together as equals, planning a future based on cooperation instead of conquest. President Carter addressed the assembly, speaking to beings from across the galaxy. "The Zephyrian Empire is gone, but the work of building a better galaxy has just begun. Earth offers its friendship and support to all free worlds." Commander Vextal, granted asylum on Earth after providing intelligence about remaining Imperial holdouts, sat in the gallery watching the proceedings. He had written a detailed report about the war that would become required reading at military academies across the galaxy. The final entry in his memoir was simple but haunting. "We thought we had found easy prey, but we had discovered the galaxy's greatest predator. Humanity didn't just defeat us. They had been hunting us from the moment their first refugee arrived on their world. Earth was never the target. Earth was the trap, and we walked into it willingly. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of empires was over. The age of freedom had begun."